Hi, I'm Sonia Jante.
I'm Jonathan Ward.
And I'm Kimberly Lane, and together we're Unlocking Leadership. We're three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. And every episode, we take a question from a real client and provide key insights to address their challenges from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunities. Let's dive into it. Our question today is from Gia in Scottsdale, Arizona. There is downsizing taking place where I work. A few of my colleagues have shared that they are considering becoming independent contractors or starting their own business. Consulting firm, even if you think about it, if they get laid off, what advice do you have for them? Who wants to get started on this? Sonia, what advice would you give Gia and her colleagues about that choice of starting their own business or consulting firm?
Well, thank you, Gina, for asking the question. It's a big change if you've been used to being employed for a really long time. So there's three things I'm going to recommend. And these would be the very same things probably in the beginning that I would tell you regarding your own team and working in an organization. And that is making sure that you have the right people in the right seats. So you need to understand the skill sets and the background and the talents of everybody that's going to be involved. You need to understand their ability to collaborate if they're going to be working together in a new firm, because you're going to have the chemistry work right. The second thing I would say is you need a business plan. You definitely need a business plan, because you need to understand what is the purpose, what is the mission, what is it that you all would do that would solve problems for clients. Because at the end of the day, you can have all the wonderful thoughts that you may have, but unless you actually are providing a service or some kind of need that you know that a client wants, and that's what you do when you're doing the business plan. You're identifying what's the service, what are we going to be providing, and all of that. And then I think the last thing you have to really take a look at is everybody's risk tolerance and everybody's budgets, in terms of in the past, you would have been able to say, well, can you make it through year one or year two? Do you have enough put away so that you know that there's not going to be a lot of pressure? Because when you do have financial pressure, you make very bad decisions. And so in this climate and environment, I can't say that you would apply the same rules, because sometimes people may have a particular skill set or need that can take off very fast. But on the other side of the equation, it might take a lot longer. Probably the last thing that I would say that it's become even more important, and that's anybody there in the group have good business development background so that they can actually understand how you put together a substantive list of potential clients, because you're going to need to be able to, the good news is we're living in a world that has a lot more virtual. So you may not be restricted just to the environment that you're in, the state that you're in or the city that you're in. You can probably be global, but it would be helpful to figure out who has business development background, what kind of a contact list do you have or potential list do you have, because you're going to have to try to get in front of them and start building your brand as soon as possible. So those are my first, just right off the top. Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, I just, the question brought back all kinds of flashbacks for me, because I remember my first half of my career was working as an internal person in a corporate environment. And my company that I was with was going through and doing a downsizing in 2001. And I started thinking about that. Is this actually an opportunity for me to volunteer? And you volunteer to get laid off, and I had a little bit of a transition package, which was very helpful. But Sonia, all the things that you said are very important. I went into this thinking that I had some really great ideas, and I had some friends to partner with, but none of us had business development experience. We were much more concentrated around the intellectual purity of the consulting offer or the coaching offer we had, then around what clients do we actually know that would end up buying this work from us. And so they were for the first part of the year afterwards, I probably made more money as a church singer than I did as a consultant for a couple of months. But there's a whole lot of practical kinds of things. I mean, I think this is one of those things where you really have to get down, as Sonia said, with a business plan and work out what the numbers are going to really look like. it costs you a lot more to buy your own health insurance than it does to get health insurance through your company, for example, things like that. Um, and where do you have the opportunity to be flexible and learn from things, or are there people you can partner with while you're getting things started off? You may not be able to do it on your own. You may have to subcontract work out and work for a lesser fee until you get yourself established. But I do, on the other hand, I do encourage it. There's something extremely liberating about working for yourself and being your own boss, even though a lot of times you end up working a lot harder than you did when you were working for another corporation. How about you, Kimberly?
Yeah, all great ideas from both of you. Yeah, Gia, it's a lot different from working for an organization who is taking care of your healthcare, managing the finances, managing the strategy, managing the accounting, all that kind of stuff, all the behind the scenes, even, if you will, and not just truly what you're consulting about or what your service might be, your service package. So really have a really good thought about what are the bonuses of going forward and starting a consulting gig, but also being aware of the dynamics that will change, so the financial responsibility that Sonia mentioned can be a huge stressor for your group. And I think it's important to really have some clear direction and conversations with your team about expectations about income and how long can you guys ideally float without it? Are you going to get investors, things of that sort? Really kind of looking at what are the strengths that each one of you bring to the table? What are the challenges each one of you bring to the table? Because if you're all great at the service you're going to provide and marketing, but nobody's good at the business development part of it or the accounting part of it, or the strategy part of it, you've got some huge gaps. And I think that business plan is number one, and putting that forward. It's also, I found starting out on my own, the loneliness factor in not having anyone else to talk to, and the mountain I had to climb was the hardest part. So it's great you got probably a group of people that you can do that with because you have each other to bounce things off of. But I think setting expectations, planning on when you expect to be up and running, how much money, by this point of time, how many clients by this point of time, break down what's going to happen on a business development perspective, who's going to do that, things that both Jonathan and Sonia had mentioned. But it's a very rewarding experience. You just have to be really clear in going into it with a business plan. And, big thing is, what problem are you trying to solve? And so who are your clients? And then who is your competition? Who is your competition? Because you've got to be able to, understand what they have to offer versus what you have to offer and how much they have the marketplace already. So this is a great topic to talk about. We can go on many, many levels, but that's the initial advice I would give you. As I always like to say, things always turn out best for those who make the best of the way things turn out. So you guys sound like you're going to make the best of the way things turn out. And I think that's a great idea. Just be very cognizant and clear on the business plan and the process and roles and responsibilities. And you might need to hire some people for the gaps, and it's generally harder than you anticipate, but not that saying you can't do it.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, it occurred to me, the one thing that I found like the hardest thing that I had to do was to learn to ask people for business. Because it was not something I'd never done business development before, but just would you consider letting me, help you solve a problem, and it took a while to figure out how to make that feel comfortable.
That transition. My other thought was that when I went into business for myself 24 years ago, I was getting certified, and it took about almost 9 months to get certified. So during that time, I did a lot of research to identify people who had been in the business and see if I could find 1 or 2 people that would be willing to, quote unquote, mentor me or give me at least the real skinny, like, what can I really expect? And I was lucky enough to find 2 people that actually thought very differently. And so it really allowed me to recognize that there were several paths to take as a consultant, and that I had a choice, and which choice did I lean into more. And so I would say, if you can find a mentor, that would be very, very helpful, because it's like, And then, as Kimberly said, it is lonely, but if you are able to, there's organizations that maybe do the kind of consulting you do, that you could go and attend sessions with them. At one of those, over time, there was a group of us that realized that we often thought similarly about the program or about the session that we'd seen. And one of them suggested, hey, what if we start a group? And so for about 5 years, there was 8 of us that met every month at the house of the 8 of us. And we made it very easy, so there was not a lot of expenses associated with it. But we actually used each other as a brain trust on each other's business. So we were able to talk about fees, we were able to talk about client approaches, et cetera, et cetera. And it was transformational because from that point forward, I felt like I was a member of a team. And so now, if you do have a firm with other leaders, you will have a team, hopefully, but something to think about.
But I think even as a team, as a consulting team, to be able to partner or be connected to other consulting firms, if you will, there's enough to go around. I believe in abundance. So it's not like you've got to sit in your own silo. Oh, he's the enemy. He's the competition. There's abundance. And so I think partnering with other like companies, maybe not exactly in your service space too, can help, bounce some of those ideas off, whether that's an organization or just finding like companies just to get to know, to have another support system. So there's enough business to go around. And I do think, especially in today's world, collaboration is key. Referring each other business is great. So it doesn't hurt.
I guess one other thing I would suggest too is have an accountability structure, whether you're working for yourself or working for another group. Is how are you going to go through and check your results every month? Have you made the number of phone calls that you needed to make? Have you met with a number of clients that you needed? Have you advanced any business? What's in the pipeline? You need to have that same kind of structure that you would have back at the office to your boss or whatever it is. Now you need to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I actually did some work. Sometimes people ask somebody to be kind of like their board of directors for them, that I want you to check on me every month and make sure I'm making progress.
That's a really good point, Jonathan. That was the thing that was most struggling for me when starting my business. If I didn't get up in the morning, no one cared. It was up to me, right? If I didn't get the proposal done or didn't make the 20 client, BD calls every day, it's like you don't get the satisfaction of having it done, or doing it even, unless you get the results you're looking for, right? That was a huge change too for me. It was just that whole accountability, not having anyone to be accountable to but myself, but the fact that you've got peers to be accountable to. And I think having you guys on maybe on a Monday morning and a Friday morning, Monday setting the expectations for the week, and Friday having the accountability conversation as a team, so that you got to show up and you got to have something to show up with and for.
There's one other piece of advice, or it's sort of blended into it. So the thing that will struggle the most for you is confidence. And you have to be able to figure out how it is that you manage yourself to be confident, particularly like when you, it's the very beginning, you're starting, you don't have a lot of clients. When I was going through this certification process, here I've been going through it for 8 months. I didn't have any clients and I was doubting a few things. And so there was this one session in which we had to actually be, certified, and there was external people that were rating us and evaluating us. And then there was one of the mentors that I mentioned that was sitting in the background. And when we finished, he said, well, congratulations, you got it. And I said, yeah, but I don't know whether I have any clients and what's going to happen. And he looked at me, he goes, you come from technology, so I'm going to tell you one thing for you to remember. And he said, if you were an IPO, I'd buy you. And I lived off of that comment for about 2 years.
Confidence right there.
My confidence builder, that I was like, okay, he's been around, he thought I could do this, then I probably can. And then sort of linked to that is, and so the good news is you can beef yourself up when you need to, but you also have to be able to admit when something didn't work out. You have to be able to, and let it go. Just let it go. It's like, okay, that was not a good plan. That was not a good thing. I shouldn't show up in that kind of a way, and just let it go. Because otherwise you'll just beat yourself up and it'll affect your confidence.
Well, yeah, to that point, Sonia, you just know you're going to fail. Know you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's part of the process. And I don't know anybody that's gone from here to here this way. It's always this way, you
Mm.
know, and be okay with trying to figure out your way to an extent. You know, hopefully it's not a big financial implication, but by going this way, you learn what works and what doesn't work, what you like, what you don't like, right? So what's successful, what's not. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to fail.
Okay. Well, Gia, I think we could probably sit down and have some drinks together in a bar and talk for several hours about this. This is a great question, and we wish you and your team all the best for this. So thank you very much for your question today. We hope that you and our viewers and our listeners have a better understanding of some of the things that you might start to consider when you're looking at becoming an independent consultant. So to our listeners, if you like the content we shared today, please like this episode and also share and subscribe on our YouTube channel, Unlocking Leadership-AskTheCoaches.com. We look forward to reading your reviews. You can also find Unlocking Leadership-Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. If you have a leadership question for us or would like to reach out to the coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks for joining us today, and tune in next time to find the keys to unlocking your best leadership.